Today I want to share with you the diet plan that I put together to help me lose 30 pounds so far. It's a cold, rainy day here in the Hill Country, and I thought it'd be perfect for a fire and a chance to sit down and share with you the program that I kind of cobbled together for myself to help me lose weight. And as I've shared with you, I'm in my early 60s, and if I can lose weight, anybody can lose weight. Sorry for any gentlemen that may be watching, but I think those of us who are postmenopausal women know how hard it can be to lose weight. It can be hard just to maintain our weight as we get older and are postmenopausal. So losing weight is another feat that it can almost sometimes seem insurmountable. But I decided that I was going to be dedicated. I was not going to throw in the towel, and I was going to really do a lot of research and find out what could I do and what's worked for other people to help me lose weight at this age. And, I think I shared in one of my previous videos around New Year's is that I'm not doing this to try to fit into skinny jeans or anything like that, not at my age, or to go to any kind of special occasion or anything like that. I really just wanted to lose weight to be healthier, especially as I age, and to make life easier on my joints and not develop diabetes and various health reasons like that. Many years ago, this whole journey started. I think I've also shared with you about this in the past, is that I had my son when I was in my 40s. And that was a wonderful experience, but an interesting one in terms of my weight and my metabolism and all of that, and trying to lose the baby weight after my son was born and whatnot. And so I went online and I was looking for diet books. And what I actually came across was Nourishing Traditions by Sally Fallon. And I think you all have heard me talk about this book many, many times. As a matter of fact, I have a whole playlist on mastering the basics of Nourishing Traditions, which I'll link to, that goes over all the things that this book talks about: making bone broths, culturing dairy, ferments, sourdough starter, sourdough bread, sprouting grains, making bread from sprouted flour, soaking beans and nuts, and all of that. And I cover all of that in my playlist. I think there's maybe 16, 17 videos that I made. So in any event, I discovered this book, and I found it very interesting because what she talks about is basically eating a traditional diet. And it was exactly the diet that I had been raised on by my mother, who was also who was always very interested in cooking traditional food and making things homemade and making things from scratch. And but as I had gotten older, and you're busy and you're working and this, that, and the other thing, I'd kind of fallen away from that and kind of forgotten about it. And then when I saw this book, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the diet that I was raised on, good, wholesome, traditional foods. And so I kind of just put weight loss for the moment in the back of my mind and stopped looking for diet books, and decided that I would just cook like this and raise my family like this. And I started making bone broth and doing all of those things and so on and so forth. And I'd lose a little weight, I'd gain a little weight. I wasn't really working hard at it at that point. I really was just focusing on getting back to a traditional diet. And so then about a year or two ago, I decided, my son had went to college, and so my husband and I were empty nesters and had a little more time to just really focus on myself and my health. And I decided, okay, I'm going to really focus now on losing weight, because eating a traditional diet, I feel, has kept me relatively healthy. But I didn't obviously eat, I ate too much, I should say, of a traditional diet, in that I didn't lose any weight. But overall, my health has been relatively good. So that was a good outcome of it. But I said, okay, now I've got to get serious and try to lose some weight, especially now that I'm getting older. And just being empty nesters, as I said, and having a little more time to myself and to devote to researching this in more detail. So I decided, well, of course I'm going to stay with Nourishing Traditions because I just love this way of traditional eating. And then not too long ago, maybe a year ago or less, Sally Fallon, author of Nourishing Traditions, came out with this book, Nourishing Diets. And basically what she does in this book is she talks about how people all over the world who eat traditional diets, what they eat, how their diet is, what it's made up of, what is the percentage of breakdown of carbohydrates, protein, fats, so on and so forth. And basically what it comes down to is what is available to traditional people who eat traditional diets. You don't need to eat everything. You know, for example, people in northern Italy, which is part of my heritage, are not taking coconut oil. And I found it interesting when she discusses that in this book, because I've never been a super fan of coconut oil. I use it here and there, but I'm not like a fan of it. I do put it in my slimming coffee, which I'll share with you in another video, but the taste is kind of masked by the coffee and all of that. But in any event, it all boils down to looking back to your ancestral ties. Where are the people, where did the people come from that you come from? And my heritage is primarily Northern Italian and on my mother's side, and Irish on my father's side. And so I've always done very well with dairy. I don't have any trouble with it, which, you know, would make sense, as Northern Italians, you know, do eat a lot of dairy. And so on. So she talks about these different things. And basically, although there are certain traditional cultures that you know, may have more fat, others may have less fat, some have more carbs, some have less carbs, depending on where they are on our planet and what is available to them. But on average, the traditional diet breaks down to 40% carbohydrates, 40% fats, and 20% protein. And so I said, well, okay, that's a good starting place. I had tried low carb, high carb, this carb, that carb, no carb. I had tried so many of those different diets that eliminated a lot of foods and whatnot, and I always failed. So I said, well, this seems very reasonable. And this is the way people have been eating, you know, for a millennial. And there are carbohydrates, there are fats, there are protein. And so I said, that makes sense to me. So I'm going to try to not eliminate any foods and eat them in fairly close to those proportions. So that's where I first started. So about 40% carbs, about 40%, and this is like not sugar and stuff, carbs saying, you know, like beans and soaked, of course, and whole grains and things like that, sprouted, of course, or soured, preparing them in traditional ways to make them easy to digest. And then about 40% fats and good wholesome fats, butter, and I always laugh when I say this, lard. Yes, lard. I know, I always feel like everybody on the other side of the camera is going, Mary, lard. But that is a traditional fat, and it actually has less saturated fat than butter, which is interesting, but I won't go on about that. But I'm a big lard aficionado. But butter and lard and clarified butter and olive oil and beef tallow, of course, is a big one I use too. And that's the fats. And then protein, really just fish, chicken, beef, you know, whatever. I really am very flexible and include a lot of things. So that was the first step. Then I discovered this diet, or this book, but it is called a diet, The 3-Season Diet. And this is by John, I think his name is Douillard. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it, but I think that's what it is. And it says, eat the way nature intended. Lose weight, beat food cravings, and get fit. So that sounded perfect. What I really liked was it said, eat the way nature intended. I felt that would be a good complement to eating a traditional foods diet. And what John Douillard discusses in this book is you really need to eat seasonally. Now, you may find it funny, this is 3-season diet, and basically what he's looking at are the growing seasons, and he looks at spring, summer, and fall, winter together, because in many climates, they're not harvesting a lot in the dead of winter. So fall and winter he puts together as one growing season. And he talks about how eat what's in season. I mean, it's just common sense. And it's interesting how that just doesn't, normally a lot of times when we say, oh, seasonal eating, we tend to think of fruits and vegetables. But it really goes a lot deeper than that, because he looks in many ways the way Sally Fallon did in traditional foods, in Nourishing Traditions. What did traditional people do with their traditional diets? So in the winter, they were eating heavier foods, that they had butchered in the summer. The meats that they had preserved and so on and so forth, things like that. And what were they eating and more fats and things like that? And what were they eating in the spring? But a much lighter diet, because food was really kind of running short. They might, in the early spring, they might be able to get some of the fresh greens, the baby greens that were just starting to come up. They may not have a lot of fat left from what they had, butchered at the end of the summer, and that had helped them survive through the fall and the winter. So it's interesting, because what he talks about in this book is that you actually eat all diets, but you eat them throughout the year. So you might have more carbs in the summer, more fruits, and more grains, and this, that, and the other thing. And then in the winter, maybe more meats and more fats. And then in the spring, a lighter diet of more vegetables and less fat, just sort of following the rhythms of how traditional peoples ate based on what was available to them. So it just dovetailed beautifully with Nourishing Traditions. So that's what I started doing. And I started just following what John Douillard discusses in this book. And I highly recommend this book. I got this, as I've shared with you all in the past, how much I love half-price books, which we have here in Texas, and they have various locations around the country. So I actually have 2 copies of this, because I keep one that I take with me to the grocery store. And I got them both at half-price books. So if you have that in your area, look in their health section where they have like the diet books, and I always see copies of it. So you might find a copy there. And certainly, of course, you can order it on Amazon. But he has, I don't know if you can see this, but the 3-season grocery list. And then what he does is he has these charts like this, and they're broken into fruits, vegetables, grains, legumes, nuts and seeds, meat and fish, sweeteners, condiments, beverages, herb teas, spices. Let me see what else we got here. Fruits, I think I said that, yes. And what is so interesting about this is that he has 3 categories as the 3 seasons. He's got spring, summer, and then what he calls winter. And then he says when it's best to eat these things. So we'll just pick something in general. A vegetable, zucchini. He says it's best to eat it in the summer, and that makes complete sense. And then in the winter, he says to reduce how much zucchini you eat unless it's cooked, and that would make sense. And the same in the spring, reduce unless cooked. You might have it canned up with something like that, and then he goes through which grains are best to eat at what time of year, all based on when they, were harvested and dried and so on and so forth. The same with nuts. Obviously, a lot of them are going to be best to be eaten in the winter, and you're going to want to reduce consumption in the summer. Things like that. It's just really, really interesting. And something that I found fascinating was the section on dairy. And this really got me thinking, because in a lot of ways, you might be able to eat dairy if you eat it at the right time of year. And I find sometimes drinking milk, just drinking milk straight, even if it's raw milk, that in the winter sometimes it can give me a lot of a feeling of phlegm and postnasal drip and whatnot. And it may be because, based on this, that our ancestors may not have been drinking a lot of fresh milk in the middle of the winter. They might have been more likely culturing it. And so there would be more chance of them eating yogurt and things like that. And so this is what I found fascinating, was that milk is okay to take in the winter, but not cold. And that, was really interesting to me, because in the winter, what do we like to drink? We like hot cocoa, and that's probably a lot better to drink than drinking cold milk in the winter. And also, too, you see the milk that the people in India make that puts cardamom and different spices in it, and they warm it and make it with tea like that. And so all of this was very fascinating to me. And of course, meat, chicken, all of that's all best in the winter. And for in the spring, some of them is good or avoid. Good in moderation, or in some cases, like in the case of seafood, in the spring, in the early spring, it's best to avoid that. And whereas beef in the summer is okay in moderation, but best in the winter. And chicken is good in the summer, but best in the winter. And so I just really found that fascinating. So I added, put these two together, compiled them together, and eating a traditional diet, and then also making sure that I ate that traditional diet in a seasonal, appropriate way. That in itself helped me to start losing weight. And I learned more as to why, because John Douillard has another book that's actually called, and I'll have to look this up, I'll put it in the description below. I think it's actually called Eat Wheat, which is interesting what he talks about. But when you eat seasonally, when you eat a traditional diet and you eat seasonally, your good gut bacteria changes from season to season. And certain good bacteria is stronger at certain times of year, at certain times of the year, and other good bacteria are stronger at other times of the year. And that good bacteria that is in your gut naturally, and this is something that we inherited from our ancestors, is made to digest certain foods better at certain times of the year. So that fascinated me. And so you might be able to digest grains better at one time of year than maybe at another time of year. And something that he talks about, which is kind of cute in this book, is that he says you really are going to do all diets, so you don't have to feel, oh, I have to do low carb. You're going to do low carb kind of naturally in the spring, maybe, because you're going to be eating more of vegetables and things like that, and almost low fat in the spring. And the summer is more of a high carb, and then the winter is more of a low carb, higher fat diet, almost not exactly 100% keto, but along those lines. So I just found that fascinating, and the fact that our gut bacteria also changes and makes it easier to digest certain foods at certain times of the year. And speaking of good bacteria, that is something that I address in the making of my skinny soups, which when I make them, I refer to the 3-season diet, and I use the vegetables. So, for example, it has 4 parts to it, which I address in the video, and one part are using prebiotic vegetables. And so I look in this list and I say, well, this is winter. What are the appropriate prebiotic vegetables to be eating? And that's right in this book. And that's what I put in my soup. And because not only will that help nourish the prebiotics, feed the probiotics, the good bacteria, not only will that help nourish my good bacteria, the prebiotics that I'm eating the right prebiotics at the right time of year to nourish the good bacteria that is strongest at that particular time of year. I hope that all makes sense. So that is basically what I did, a traditional diet following a very seasonal diet, and which is what a traditional peoples would have done. But I take those traditional foods and I make sure that I eat them according to their proper seasons. And that together really, I found I started to lose weight just making those simple tweaks. I was already eating a traditional foods diet, but then I made a point of really sticking to eating that which was in season. And I started to lose weight. Then I added another element to it that really helped boost my weight loss. And that was when I came across another book from Half Price. It was the 8-Hour Diet. And this is something that you may be hearing a lot about already. And it talks about intermittent fasting. And I don't always stick with 8 hours, but what I try to do is eat breakfast and then eat a late lunch, early dinner. And then I don't eat after that until breakfast the next morning. And sometimes that breakfast and late lunch, early dinner can be within an 8-hour window. Sometimes it's in a little more of like maybe a 10-hour window. But then that means that I'm not eating again for 14 hours. That has been one of the biggest helps to helping me lose weight. And I'm not hungry. I don't feel uncomfortable or anything like that. And if I am a little hungry, then I'll just stretch it out, and it'll be I'll have a 12-hour window where I eat my meals, and then I'm 12 hours without food. I sleep better, I feel better, and it really turbocharged the weight loss. And that I found fascinating. And basically, what I would do is, as I said, breakfast and a late lunch, or breakfast, lunch, and a very light dinner, maybe just some soup for dinner on those days when I was going more for a 12-hour window. But overall, it often is less than a 12-hour window. It's often more close to a 10-hour window in which I'm eating. And that's just been fantastic. So that's basically what I did. And so far, I've lost 30 pounds. And what I wanted to do, and I wanted to share with you, is that I wanted to see if I could maintain that weight loss. Because that I think is the most difficult thing to do. I think once you find a good program for yourself and you fall into a routine, you can start to lose weight. But then maintaining that weight loss, that seems to plague a lot of people. And I wanted to see, can I maintain this weight loss? So around the end of the summer, I said, well, we'll be going into the fall, we'll be going into the holidays. I'm not going to stress myself. I'm just going to eat a traditional diet. I'm going to do the best I can with seasonal foods. I'm sure I'm going to have some holiday treats. I may not always be able to stay within, with people inviting you over and whatnot, may not always be able to stay within my window of intermittent fasting. I'm just going to relax. I'm going to enjoy. I'm not going to overindulge, but I'm going to enjoy. And I was very pleased that for the most part, I maintained that 30-pound weight loss. Maybe a pound or two fluctuation here and there, but overall, I maintained that 30-pound weight loss. I was so happy. And now that it's the beginning of the year, I'm going to get back into now losing a little more weight and just take it one day at a time. And I'll come back here periodically and update you, maybe have like a little weight loss Wednesday, maybe not every Wednesday, but do a little weight loss Wednesday update for you to let you know how I'm doing and the weight that I'm losing and any other tweaks that I'm adding to my program and so on and so forth. And one thing I wanted to mention, because I didn't say it, the 8-Hour Diet is by David Zinczenko. I think that's how his name is, David Zinczenko. And So, just to recap, so basically I started with Nourishing Traditions by Sally Fallon and just coming back to a traditional foods diet, and one that really was just try to fashion it after diets of traditional people that had a mix of carbohydrates, fats, and protein, and then combine that with the 3-season diet to make sure that the traditional foods diet I was eating was also keeping with the seasons. And so that is kind of a modified version where you go, at one point during the year it's kind of high carb, and then the next part of the year it's more high fat and low carb, and then in the spring, more low fat. And it's interesting, it's very cyclical, so you get to really have a little bit of everything. You never have to worry and say, oh, I can't have any fruit. Well, in the summer, this past summer, oh my gosh, I enjoyed so much fresh fruit, and it was just wonderful. And I felt good, and I continued to lose weight because I think that I was eating it seasonally. I was eating it at the right time of the year. My gut bacteria was in good condition to digest it, and my body was happy, and I lost weight. And so then we had the Nourishing Traditions, the 3-season diet, and then I just added in intermittent fasting, and this has helped amazing. And what I like about the intermittent fasting, it's also helped me sleep a lot better, and it has completely, I'm sorry if I hit the mic, it's completely eliminated any acid reflux that I had. I used to have a little problem with that, and eating and trying to finish up and not eat anything like after 5 or 6 o'clock, I sleep much better, and I have no acid reflux. And one other thing I wanted to mention, because people sometimes ask me about this, is what do I do about exercise? And I have to be honest with you, I have never been a super duper exerciser. So I started slow. And what I do is, and you may laugh at this, and even my husband thought that it would not be particularly helpful, but he was a good egg and joined in with me, and now he loves it and finds that he even feels better. And what I do is I have some DVDs by a woman named Leslie, I think she pronounces her last name Sansone, and she has a program called Walk at Home, and you put the DVD in the player, in the thing for the television, the DVD player, and she walks and she kicks and lifts her arms, totally low impact. And my husband and I do that in the morning. It's 2 miles, and it's like an interval training. She starts slow, and then she does a little fast, and then slows down, and then a little fast, and then slows down, and it's great. And so that's another thing. I feel wonderful when I do that. And then, and I sleep better at night, and it also helps some of the pounds come off. And then we also have a dog, Obi-Wan, I've introduced you to her before. And we also walk her in the evening, and that helps. We live in the hill country, and it's real hilly, so there's a lot of up and down. And so that's definitely good exercise. And especially we usually walk her in the evening because a lot of months it can be quite warm here. And so if you live in a climate where it's warm, or even maybe where it's very snowy in the winter and it's difficult for you to get out and walk, having a DVD program is fantastic. So I highly recommend that you look into checking her out. I'll put a link in the description below to her. She has a website, and you can learn all about her. And you can also buy her videos on Amazon. But go and look at her website because she has everything together. It's very organized. On Amazon, it's just kind of hit or miss. So look at her website first, and you can get a feel for the different videos that she offers. And then for the new year, we're going to add in a little strength training, and we got another DVD, and I don't have it around. I'll show it to you another day. I forget the man's name, but it's strength training with bands, and you can sit in a chair or you can stand up. He has 3 people himself doing it, and he looks in very good shape. And then there's another man who's standing, but not as in good shape as the leader, and then there's a lady who's sitting in a chair and doing it that way. So it's really for all levels, and we're looking forward to that to help build some muscle. So I'll keep you updated on what we think of that and how it's going. Well, I look forward to sharing more with you about my weight loss journey. And in the interim, if you're interested in learning more about mastering the basics of traditional foods cooking, be sure to check out my playlist and then subscribe to my channel. Click on the little notification bell below, and I look forward to seeing you next time over there in my Texas Hill Country kitchen. Love and God bless.